Perhaps you've been following the controversy around the comments made by Representative Omar, the freshman Democrat representative from Minnesota, one of two first Muslim women to be appointed and elected. After some comments were made and interpreted to be anti-Semitic, the House was going to pass a resolution, really a thinly veiled rebuke against the representative. And then after much more discussion, the resolution passed overwhelmingly that condemned anti-Semitism, bigotry against Muslims, and denounced racism against minorities in general. Such strong reactions. I'm sure you have your thoughts and opinions about all this if you followed it in any way. And I'm sure there are as many thoughts and opinions as there are people in the room. But I think that we can agree on this, that we are fairly accustomed to navigating hate speech and bigotry on a regular basis. Right? We've held the question of hate in society, but we have not held the question of love. And while perhaps we are more sensitive in 2019, we are more sensitive to hateful speech and aware of microaggressions, it doesn't mean that we've made progress in love. And you may think that a discussion of love does not belong on the political playground or in the social realm, but I am going to suggest that we think more expansively about love and its centrality to all of our living. And this Lenten season, we are looking at inhabiting love, asking the question deeply, to what extent is my life loving? You have heard me say before that the greatest successes I have in life are because I've loved well, and my greatest failures are because I have failed to love well. These cocoons that you'll see, and they will grow over the Lenten season. I think too many of us are wrapped in the narrow confines of what it means to love. And as we make our way through Lent, perhaps we will find ourselves on Easter transformed into our full and beautiful selves, into a depth of loving and thinking about loving that perhaps we have not experienced before. Here in Silicon Valley, we're known to be smart and innovative. We may be smarter, but are we wiser? Because to live more wisely, we must pursue what it means to love. Love not just in a personal way, but in a public way also. Krista Tippett, in her book, Becoming Wise, says, love is the superstar of virtues and the most watered down. We've privatized love. We've romanticized love. We've lived it as a feeling when it is a way of being. Are you with me so far? The great German poet Rilke, in his Letters to a Young Poet, says, love is perhaps the most difficult task given us, the most extreme, the final proof and text, for which all other work is only preparation. And here's the thing, we do not accomplish the difficult simply by willing it so, but we accomplish it by hard work, by intention, and by practice. Think of the people you love the most in the world. Tell me it doesn't take work to stay in that loving relationship. I see no one is looking anywhere near their partners at this point. That's why we must make love a habit. Get in the groove Intentionally bring those things into our life that will open us to more love, to be more loving. It may seem unlikely, but today we begin with the habit of stillness. You might ask, what does stillness have to do with love? Well, I think actually finding stillness in our fast-paced and frenzied society is a daunting task, actually. I think we are, many of us anyways, subjects of the tyranny of the urgent. How many of you are driven, your day driven by what comes in your inbox rather than the highest priorities you have set for yourself? Anybody here? Stillness. How many of us have trouble unplugging from the phone? Stillness will look differently for every one of us, at least externally. You may meditate or walk or listen to music. But internally, for each of us, if we practice stillness regularly, it will lead to results. This one woman, Ed Bacon, in the book 8 Habits of Love, tells the story of a colleague of his who has a very high-powered job. And she goes to his church, and she heard Archbishop Desmond Tutu speak and was so transformed by that experience that now, in the midst of the worst day, in the midst of communications going awry, she is now known by all her staff and her colleagues to slip into her office to get her tutu on. She has learned what it is to take a moment of stillness in the midst of chaos and center and get to that place that she experienced when she was in Tutu's presence and how she felt in that moment. So when they say, "Where's Jessica?" her staff says, "Getting her tutu on, she'll be out in a moment." The great monk Thomas Keating says, "Our minds, our hearts and souls are like basins of silty water. When stirred, the water is cloudy and our vision obscured, but when the water has been at rest, the silt filters down to the bottom, leaving the water clear." Think about those things. Think about a bowl of water. Think about the things that come into your life and it gets all stirred up. Anybody felt stirred up this week? We cannot make decisions grounded in love when we are stirred up because we lack clarity. We can't see clearly. So may I lovingly say, when you are stirred up, do not write an email. I think that deserves an amen. Amen. Because when we are stirred up, we cannot see clearly, and we cannot ground ourselves in love and make choices and decisions from those places, from our highest self, from that place of belovedness, from who we really want to be in the world. It is only in stillness that the silt can begin to drop down and the water becomes clear once again. Our greatest challenge is to stop and to hold still long enough to endure the discomfort of the muck in the water, to let it settle. I want you to imagine with me today that that is what Jesus was doing out in the wilderness. Letting things settle, finding a way to be still, to be with himself, to solidify his identity as the beloved so he could live from that place. And he had to overcome the temptations. And let's put it in our worldview today. Whatever you think about Satan and good and evil is not the point. The point is, We all have those voices in our head that tell us and lead us away from that center of love. The first one for him was turn the stones to bread. That voice saying, you will not have enough. You better do something about it now. That scarcity mentality, that impulse to think I need to grab what I can get now because there is not going to be enough for me. I am not going to have enough, and that turns into I am not enough. And that pulls us immediately from love's center. Scarcity thinking will pull you away from love every time. It leads us to selfishness. It leads us to get mine at any cost because there's only so much to go around. I think that's one of the great illnesses of our society. We have abundance in this country as few nations do. Abundance. There is plenty for everyone. When people say to me, how can there be a God of love when there's hungry people in the world? I say, it has nothing to do with God. There's plenty of food to go around. But the scarcity mentality of there is only so much pulls us from our highest calling of love in our individual lives and in our public lives. The second thing that was pounding in the head of our teacher was the word, throw yourself down and let angels catch you. Be dramatic, be spectacular, feed your ego. We all have an impulse to place ourselves at the center of everything. Right? Enough about you, let's talk about me. We used to say of our daughter when she was young, mercy, world. We could say that about ourselves. There are moments when, as expansive as I can be sometimes, I can be equally small-minded. Where my world just shrinks and it's me and the world's like this is what matters. That ego-driven impulse to put oneself at the center of everything, as if it's all about me. Thankfully, I have a spouse who reminds me, it's not about you. But when I give in to that impulse, that voice to draw me to that ego place, it pulls me from love center. And the last voice in the head of Jesus, if you do this, I'll give you the kingdom, keys to the kingdoms of the world. That temptation, that voice to place his loyalty, his allegiance to power rather than to love. We are so, our allegiances can be so easily misplaced. What if our highest allegiance was to love? What if that transcended tribe and nation and the greatest people who have lived, who have influenced the world for good, I guarantee you they would have had some practice of stillness, some habit of finding that place of strength and center within. So journey with me, will you, through Lent, to boldly ask, to what extent is my life loving? And do I know how to be still? Because underneath, friends, if we're really honest, what we all seek, even when we can't name it, is to be loved and to give love. So the 14th century poet Hafiz knew that. I know the way you can get when you haven't had a drink of love. Your face gets hard, your muscles cramp, you weigh every word, suspicions rise, trust erodes. Even the squirrels and birds think, what can we sing to make them better? I know how you get. I know how I get when I have not drunk deeply from love. So take a good long drink of love. That's all a sane person would ever care about, is giving love. Amen.